Hello, Dr. DJ here with another school story. Now, this is going to get serious, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. I am probably one of the biggest champions of educators in the universe. But I also believe we need to look at ourselves sometimes closely, including myself. Let he who is without sin, right? So don't take it that way. Let's just be objective and listen to this story, because I'm going to read it to you rather than tell you, because it'll take less time. We might go over it 10 minutes today. This is from my book, which I'm not here to sell books, but the story is in here. It's based on a true story by Gene Meisner, which was actually published in 1964. It's dated, but I think the message is just as clear and appropriate and pertinent today as it was then. It started with a tragedy on a biting cold February morning. I was driving behind the Milford Corners bus, as I did most snowy mornings on my way to school. It veered and stopped short at the hotel, which it had no business doing. And I was annoyed, as I had to come to an unexpected stop. A boy lurched out of the bus, reeled, stumbled, and collapsed in a snowbank at the curb. The bus driver and I reached him at the same moment. "He's dead," the driver whispered. It didn't register for a minute. I glanced quickly at the scared young faces staring down at us from the school bus. "A doctor, quick. I'll phone from the hotel across the street," I said. "No use, I tell you. He's dead." The driver looked down at the boy's still form. He never even said he felt bad. Just tapped me on the shoulder and said real quiet, "I'm sorry. I have to get off at the hotel." And that's all. Polite and apologizing like. At school, the giggling, shuffling morning noise quieted as news went down the halls. I passed a huddle of girls. "Who was it? Who died on the way to school?" I heard one of them half whisper. "I don't know his name. Some kid from Milford Corners." It was like that in the faculty room and in the principal's office. "I'd appreciate your going out to tell the parents," the principal told me. "They haven't a phone, and anyway, somebody from the school should go there in person. I'll cover your classes." "Why me?" I asked. "Wouldn't it be better if you did it?" "I didn't know the boy," the principal admitted levelly, "and in last year's sophomore personalities column, I noted you were listed as favorite teacher." I drove through the snow and cold down the Bad Canyon Road to the Evans place and thought about the boy, Cliff Evans. His favorite teacher, I thought. He hadn't spoken 2 words to me in 2 years. I could see him in my mind's eye all right. He's sitting back there in the last seat in my afternoon literature class. He came in the room by himself, left by himself. Cliff Evans, I muttered to myself. A boy who never talked. I thought a minute. A boy who never smiled. I never saw him smile once. The big ranch kitchen was clean and warm. I blurted out my news somehow. Mrs. Evans reached blindly toward a chair. "He never said anything about being ailing." His stepfather snorted. "He ain't said nothing about anything since I moved in here." Mrs. Evans pushed a pan to the back of the stove and began to untie her apron. "Now, hold on," the husband snapped. "I got to have breakfast before I go to town. Nothing we can do anyway. If Cliff hadn't been so dumb, he'd have told us he didn't feel good." After school, I sat in the office and stared blankly at the record spread out before me. I was to read the file and write an obituary for the school paper. The almost bare sheets mocked the effort. Cliff Evans, white, never legally adopted by stepfather, 5 young half-brothers and sisters. These meager strands of information and the list of D grades were all the records had to offer. Cliff Evans had silently come in the school door in the mornings and gone out the school door in the evenings, and that was all. He had never belonged to a club, never played on a team, He had never held an office, and as far as I could tell, he had never done one happy, noisy kid thing. He had never been anybody at all. How do you go about making a boy into a zero? The grade school records showed me. The first and second grade teachers' annotations read, sweet, shy child, and timid but eager. Then the third grade note had opened the attack. Some teacher had written in a good firm hand, Cliff won't talk, uncooperative, slow learner. The other academic, I'll call them sheep, had followed with dull, slow-witted, low IQ. And you know what? They became correct. The boy's IQ score in the 9th grade was listed at 83, but his IQ in the 3rd grade had been 106. The score didn't go under 100 until the 7th grade. Even the shy, timid, sweet children have resilience, and it takes time to break them. I stomped to the typewriter and wrote a savage report pointing out what education had done to Cliff Evans. I slapped a copy on the principal's desk and another in the sad, dog-eared file. I banged the typewriter and slammed the file and crashed the door shut, but I didn't feel much better. A little boy kept walking behind me. A little boy with a pale face, skinny body and faded jeans and big eyes that had looked and searched for a long time and then had become veiled. I could guess how many times he had been chosen last to play sides in a game, how many whispered child conversations had excluded him, how many times he hadn't been asked anything. I could see and hear the faces that said over and over, "You're nothing, Cliff Evans." A child is a believing creature. Cliff undoubtedly believed them. Suddenly, it seemed clear to me when finally there was nothing left at all for Cliff Evans. He collapsed on a snowbank and just went away. The doctor might list heart failure as a cause of death, but that would not change my mind. We could not find 10 students in the school who had known Cliff well enough to attend the funeral as his friends. So the student body officers and a committee from the junior class went as a group to the church, being politely sad. I attended the services with them and sat through it with a lump of cold lead in my chest and a big resolve growing through me. I have never forgotten Cliff Evans or that resolve. He has been my challenge year after year, class after class. I look for veiled eyes or bodies scrunched down into their seat in an alien world. Look, kids, I say silently, I may not do anything else for you this year, but not one of you is going to come out of here as a nobody. I'll work or fight to the bitter end doing battle with society and the school board, but I won't have one of you coming out of here thinking you're a zero. It's a tough story. Hard, especially because it's true. And you know, there's a lot of Cliff Evanses. Now, see, here's the part where we all get defensive. You know, like what do you expect us to do? We're not social workers, we're not counselors, we're not psychiatrists, we're not psychologists, we're not trained in mental health issues necessarily. I mean, you know, we got standardized tests we're measured against. We're going to get fired if our scores don't go up. We got to keep the class clean and quiet. And we got all these people looking over our shoulder. We got parents that are calling us, parents that are mad, kids that are acting out, kids don't give a crap, you know. And you're going to say, well, why don't you just take time to sit down and hold every child's hand just in case? Because it is easy to Saturday morning quarterback. It is easy to do that. So what's the answer? I don't think the answer is to get certified as a psychologist. I think let's be realistic. I think this teacher has a message for us, though. And I think it's this. It almost doesn't matter what you do. I don't think you have to change your academic approach. I don't think you have to change your textbooks. I think all we have to do is in our heads make a shift that says humans are more important than curriculum, books, grades, whiteboards, deadlines, and certainly test scores. Now, we still pay attention to those. But if we say that to ourselves, we will portray that from ourselves. We will look at children differently, and they will feel it. They have radar, you know. They will feel it. And if we make eye contact with each of them, and send an unspoken message that someone here in authority sees you, cares about you, and is here if you need me. And by God, you are not insignificant. If we send that message to every child, it costs nothing. It won't take that much extra time. And we'll lay our head on the pillow better, I think, knowing we haven't created any Cliff Evans today on our part. This is hard. School is hard. It's long hours, a lot of kids, a lot of demands. You have to go in there and be at the top of your game. If you don't feel good, your feet hurt, you got a headache, you had a fight with your spouse, your checkbook is bouncing. You have to go in there and be right here, hi kids, But I just think if we just in our mind say people are more important than inanimate objects, and remember that, it will come across, and it could make a difference. And at least it'll make a difference to us. So, why do schools revictimize, victims? This kid's a victim, and he got revictimized. Not just those things in his cum folder, but I've often maintained that neglect is more harmful than abuse. That, flesh heals, bruises go away, but being neglected doesn't. It creates a bruise on the soul. To feel like a nobody, to feel unimportant, to feel insignificant, to feel meaningless, to look at the future and it looks bleak and nobody sends a countermanding message, I think is neglect. And we can do something about that. And I'm going to stop preaching now. I don't think of it as preaching. I hope it's just sharing. I've had my own experiences with student suicides. And they still hurt today. And you always wonder if isn't something you could have done. Okay. So like this teacher, my commitment has been, from now on, I'm going to try to stay alert to any of these little signs, any of these little subliminal messages almost. But I'm going to just continue to send that message forth that you are more important than inanimate objects. And maybe that's really how we earn our pay. So, again, we're not casting any blame here on anybody. I'm sympathizing with our plight, our mutual plight, as educators, as service-oriented people. I hope you understand that. And I will talk to you next time. You make a good day for yourself.